Welcome back, everybody, to the Kala podcast. We deliver campus news and provide entertainment for the Honolulu Community College campus. I'm your host, Chris. Along with me are my co-hosts, Alan and Bryson.
Hello.
Aloha.
Quick few reminders for returning students and new students. Whenever you're coming to campus, make sure to use the LumenSite app. You can access it at uh.campus.lumensite.com. Make sure to wear a mask, and if you are looking to make appointments with your counselors or the bookstore, you guys can access them on Star Balance. For more campus information and updates and available services, visit honolulu.hawaii.edu/COVID-19 services. Joining us for this episode is a distinguished professor at Honolulu Community College, Mr. Nico. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you.
It's awesome to hear. So, I guess this is our first introduction to you. So, if you could tell us a bit about yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I have been teaching visual arts, studio art, and art appreciation, communication art classes early on, and I started in 1999. So I've been at Honolulu Community College since for the last 20, almost 21 years. And I'm originally from Iran, but I spent most of my life in the United States. Most of that particular portion of my life in Hawaii. I moved to Hawaii in 1985 or 86. That's a long time ago. And I've been establishing myself here, my family, ever since. I graduated from Windward Community College in liberal arts and University of Hawaii at Manoa in fine arts with a bachelor's degree, and then I earned my master's degree at San Francisco State University in California, and I came back here. And I've been teaching, ever since. Anything else?
How did your passion for, digital art and photography first come?
Okay. When I started taking pictures, digital photography was at its infancy. It was very young and people didn't like it. Photographers didn't like digital photography. They never took it seriously. It was only used by the military and research, components of our government. And it was just a laboratory thing. It wasn't a serious thing. And so I started with analog and chemical-based photography at Windward Community College with Mark Hamasaki. He was my professor. How did I find I love photography? When I switched from computer programming, that was my major, to photography. Do I regret it now? I don't know. But back then, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I spent hours and hours in photography laboratory, and I never felt tired. So if you do something without getting paid for, and you keep doing it, and you do more of it, and you become obsessed with it, you realize that there's definitely a love relationship that you have to respect. And so that's how it happened. I realized photography was the thing. Visual arts in general was always close to my heart. And when I decided to choose a major at University of Hawaii Manoa, I submitted my portfolio to the art department, because when you move up from 200 level courses into 300 level courses, you have to submit a portfolio. They don't accept just everybody. You have to show some promise and not just interest, but serious commitment to your major. And that's how they looked at my portfolio, they interviewed me, and they decided that that's for me to continue. And they took chances on me. And I don't think I disappointed them, at least in terms of becoming a photography and art instructor.
So I got a question.
Sure.
With your passion for art, what do you see in the importance of photography and art for you?
Oh, okay. Well, to be honest, photography came to me relatively very easily. I worked hard on learning the skills, but the chance, or the lucky part, or the chance aspect of photography, which we all experience on occasions, was something I could not overlook. Every time I took photographs, I showed my photographs to my friends and professors and classmates. It seemed like that they approved of it and they thought I was doing really, really well. So having that response from the public and having your photographs shown in exhibitions locally, especially through University of Hawaii and other publications at the time when I was attending University of Hawaii Manoa, sort of, kind of became my source of energy and inspiration. So I continued on that route. But at the same time, I was very much interested in history of visual arts, and reading philosophy of not only visual arts, but generally speaking, I was a good student of history and philosophy. So that really helped. Basically, it's just like when you do gardening, you just plant flowers and you plant seeds, and you just tend to, the growth, and then it becomes enriched over time. It becomes better and better. You inculturate yourself through education. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. Kind of lost track of what the original question was, but I kind of got involved with the passion that I had.
Right.
So, when the opportunity presented itself for me to work at Honolulu Community College, I decided to, join the teaching faculty at the art department. We had a pretty good group of professors back then teaching art and communication arts. A professor by the name of Bud Brooks. I don't know if you guys know him, but he retired about, I think, 10, 12 years ago. He was an amazing photography teacher, and he was responsible for moving Honolulu Community College from vet laboratory, a photography laboratory setups into digital. So what we have today as a communication arts program at Honolulu Community College was founded by Bud Brooks. And Sandy Sampe was also there, a gentleman by the name of Kaiser, who unfortunately passed a few years ago. So these were, quite important professors in Hawaii, not only in terms of community colleges, but in terms of the profession of photography and arts. So I felt I was in really good company, and Marcia Roberts-Deutsch, who just retired last year, she was there. She was a Punahou graduate and Harvard-educated professor. I mean, you had quality here at Honolulu Community College. It's kind of hard to believe that such a relatively small college, a community college, had such quality to offer. So I didn't have to think twice when I joined the faculty, and the rest is history, basically.
It's amazing to know that there's these many amazing professors at HCC, and you're one of them now.
Yes, and when I was at UH Manoa, I remember my professor, Professor Gay Chan. in one of our classes was mentioning Bud Brooks that if we want to get into digital photography in the future, as I said, it was very young. I mean, we are talking about early 1990s. And so I heard the name Bud Brooks at that point, and I did not get to meet him until like 6 or 7 years later, but I knew about him. And my professor at UH said, if you guys want to continue in serious commercial and professional photography, you have to go see Bud Brooks and take classes with him, despite the fact that he's a community college teacher. So yeah, we had such quality to be very proud of. Unfortunately, over time, because of the budget cuts, we lost all that. Those great professors, their places was never filled. The positions were never open, but that's another story for another day.
Maybe you can take over. Well, on the topic of teaching, how were you able to move your class to online format because of the pandemic?
Okay, that's a really good question. I don't know if it's a character thing or it's a personality thing or professional thing. I don't know, but I always like to have plans B and C. You know, anytime I design a course, I always had other plans to back up that course. So when we were teaching our face-to-face classes, I was already teaching online. I was teaching Introduction to Visual Arts, which is Art 101. And when I developed that course all by myself, going back to, I think it was the year 2008 or 9, sometimes around that period, I created a, I don't know what you call it, a shadow course in terms of all my visual arts classes. So every time I design a course to teach, I also designed a mirror image of that course on Lalima. So thank God for Lalima, because it's a wonderful, wonderful tool, and it's an open source, platform for us to use, and it's a wonderful, place to be, because it would allow you to expand your course and design it the way you like it. It has many hidden, tools and possibilities, potentials that you can explore. So I had already an online, a mirror course for my photography classes, but I did not have all of my lectures on that website. So all I had to do was basically to find proper sources for the techniques I was teaching in my face-to-face classes. And thank God for digital technology and, access to online sources. And these are basically open source, resources you can go to and freely take advantage of. And anytime you lose access to one, you can move on to another, maybe even better source to work with. One thing I realized, that there is no way that I could get the funding to create presentations that are highly technical for my class. So I decided to spend hours in research online sources. And through those hours of research, I found, multiple high quality sources that if I had to make that video for my class, I had to spend somewhere around $10,000, $15,000 to make that video. And having the equipment to show the students what is possible would have been impossible, because the school wasn't really, they don't have the money, so we can't really ask them for money. So that really helped to develop the course online, having wonderful resources to go to. Then it became a matter of organization. We just had to organize the course. And I'm on the side of simplicity, but class and elegance. So when you design something that is elegant, has class, and it's easy to understand and follow, then you find people who are willing to take chances on you, and they're willing to invest their time, money, and energy on becoming a part of your course. So that's why my photography classes seem to be one of amongst the most popular courses on our campus. And I'm very happy about that, and I appreciate every single student who signed up for my class. So it wasn't too hard for me, but I know other my colleagues, some of my colleagues had a hard time to quickly adjust and move on to online platforms. It's not an easy task, but I was lucky, and that I was always fascinated with technology, and I enjoyed working with technology. I don't think of technology as high technology as a nuisance or an anti-humanity thing. I think it's our salvation. I think with good technology we can actually solve a lot of our problems. I hope I answered your question.
No, you answered fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Answered wonderfully.
Thank you.
But
So, I'll go.
well, were there any struggles that students experienced during the online courses?
Okay, that's a good question, Alan. Well, before the pandemic, we had at least two groups of students. There may be more, but the two that I could see, one group was completely comfortable with online education. They know how to dedicate their time, organize, and discipline themselves learning online. So they had no problem. But a greater number of students did not have that background. So for them was a rude awakening. It was a slap in their face. Wake up, and you have to get online. And then how are you going to do it? How are you going to discipline yourself? So I think the greatest challenge, as opposed to be placed on instructors, was placed on students. To learn how to discipline themselves, how to manage their time, because time management is really important for online education. A lot of people in the beginning of online education and its development, they thought that online teaching is a joke. It's not serious. But then when you actually take an online class and you're expected to perform, take exams or produce work, you realize that the expectations, if not the same, if not higher, they're pretty much the same as your face-to-face classes. So, I think my students, the first semester in last spring, they had a hard time, many of them did, to move up to online learning. But then many of them today, I see, have adjusted very quickly. And the only thing I think most students have problem with, and they want to, they want to have clear and very fast open channels of communication with instructors. A lot of students feel disappointed and disenchanted when they email their professors and they don't get responses. So one of the things I learned in early 2000, when University of Hawaii Manoa had courses on online teaching, they recruited volunteers from the faculty of different campuses, and they were teaching them what online education is. That was really new. Okay, and this was the time, early 2000, like 2002, I think, or 2001. I was traveling in Europe, and I was working for Honolulu Community College. So I decided to sign up for that online class that UH was experimenting with. And I took the course, and I traveled during summertime. I traveled to Europe, going from one country to another. And responding to my teachers' questions and doing homework from online classes. And I found out how wonderful it was. I could be anywhere in the world and still, commit myself to taking the class. The challenge was, of course, different keyboards in different countries was really hard to work with. Every time I went to one of those internet cafes, I don't know what they call them now these days, but so other than that, what really impressed me, the fact that the instructor, there was a woman, I forgot her name, but she was really good. One of the things that really impressed me was that every time I asked her a question, it didn't matter when during the day it was or at night, she seemed to be always on the computer responding. I once even made a joke that you're probably taking your shower and responding to your students. So the fact that I got responses back very quickly, like within an hour, helped me to solve my problem. So small obstacles wouldn't become big hurdles and stop me from enjoying my education. And I took that to heart. So now when my students ask me questions, I try to respond to them very quickly. That's one lesson I think many of old-timers faculty should learn, and make the communication as clear and as fast as possible. When the students have access to their professors and they get responses, they calm down and they can move on with their projects and classes. So that seems to be the only challenge, communication with students that I can, name. And then, of course, the usual discipline, how to manage your time. Managing time is not easy. Even if you take face-to-face classes, you may not be able to manage your time. And that's an issue I would suggest that our universities and colleges to make mandatory courses for students to take the first year they come to college, how to survive and how to thrive in your college education. I mean, that's a course that I think I don't know if it does exist or not, but if there is such a course to teach students how to manage their time, how to attend classes, how to take notes, how to fulfill their assignments and projects, that would be a great course to take, I think, for everybody. And then when they learn that, everything else becomes just piece of cake, in my opinion, anyways.
Do you have a preference for online or face-to-face? Because I know most students would probably prefer face-to-face.
Yes. Well, I should be honest with you. On one hand, I think online education is wonderful for some people, especially people who have jobs. They work during the day. They cannot afford the luxury of being in a classroom, a face-to-face classroom. So it's wonderful for them. But online education is not for everybody. And as a teacher who was always in love with teaching, I mean, I was a teenager, I was thinking about becoming a teacher. And then I became an adult and I was thinking about becoming a teacher. Even when I was in college, I was spending my money on collecting books and videos and tapes that I could use in my future classrooms. So, you really like something when you start investing your time and money on it without having to do that. So the performance aspect, just like when you're a performer, you're a musician, you're an actor, when you go on stage, everything you do throughout your life is for that 1 hour that you spend on stage. When that performance becomes the rush of your day, okay, then you kind of get addicted to it. It's very addictive, especially if you feel that you do well when you're performing. So to be honest with you, I love face-to-face teaching. I think it's wonderful to be able to see students' faces in person, ask them questions, respond to their questions, play games with them, let them play games with you. It's really wonderful. But it's become luxury at this time during this pandemic. So I can't really have a I mean, I can have a preference. I have a preference for face-to-face classes, but it's not possible at this time. I mean, the pros and cons, the pros of online education right now outweigh the cons of your question.
Yeah, that was a perfect one answer. Do you see your classes being more available online in the future, or would you prefer to go back to a more face-to-face class?
Well, yeah. I mean, thank God for the multitude of people, tastes, and opportunities. Because of that multitude, we are not limited to just a narrow a venue of possibilities. Because of that multitude of possibilities, I don't think we have to choose one or the other. We could have both. So I'm gladly ready to teach face-to-face and online classes. As I said, there are at least two types of people you have your clients, you have your patrons. Some patrons would love to take courses at night. They don't want to come to your campus because they're working during the day. So we cater to them. And then we can also cater to folks who like to come to our campuses. And I mean, yes, so I can't deny the fact that when I have my students on campus face-to-face, during the class time, I can ask them to take their cameras and go outside. I go outside with them on campus, on the mall, and start taking pictures. That was one of the most favorite activities we had in my classes, my face-to-face classes. I cannot do that right now because students are autonomous. They're pretty much on their own, with the exception of a live meeting that we have, and I record that meeting on La'alima. It's just like Zoom, but it's La'alima embedded program. It's a meeting program. So students show up. One class shows up on Tuesdays at night, 7 o'clock, and we run that class up to 10:30. They don't have to attend, but if they do attend, they get credit for it. Extra credit, and that is recorded and then shared with the class afterwards. But the importance of being able to analyze those photographs. I mean, I'm just talking about photography in this case. So I look at the assignments they turn in. I have to study the metadata for every photograph. Metadata, you folks probably know, contains all the information about the camera, about the time of the day, and the aperture, shutter speed, ISO, whatever technical information I need is embedded in the metadata of every single photograph. So I spend a lot of time studying the metadata of my students' photographs. I take notes, and on the live meeting on La'alima, I go over that information. So I tell them you need to do more of this and do less of that, or don't do this, do that. So when they go and review the study of their work, and then follow the instructions and advices of their faculty, their instructor, hopefully they improve. But what is missing is the fun of actually being there and taking pictures on campus. So I miss that. I can't deny the fact that face-to-face classes could be a lot more fun.
So for those that are that don't know, and for people listening on the podcast that are interested, could you give us a brief rundown on what digital imaging technology is and what you teach in your class?
Okay, that's a really good question, Bryson. Well, the whole idea of technology scares people, but digital photography or digital imaging is created in the image of analog photography. So if you are an old school photographer, that means you're more you have more years living on this planet. You probably remember the time of chemical-based photography, and it was so easy for almost anybody to take camera and take pictures and take out the film, give it to Long's drugstore, for example, to process, or one of these print shops commercially available. So that era is behind us, more or less. Okay, there's some professional photographers who still, use film photography, and they're totally devoted to film photography even today. But digital photography has increased the democratic aspect of photography. By democratic, I mean the majority. That means the majority of people, even though they're not skilled in that particular branch of knowledge, they could take a camera and press a button. Just point it at something or someone and press the button. The camera or the phone camera can take over and automatically take an image. Now, that image may not be artistically or graphically magnificent, but you see an image, you see an impression of reality nevertheless. So what digital photography has given us is a tremendous gate to possibilities that did not exist, removing hurdles and limitations that film photography presented to us. For example, if I were going to take photographs for my projects, I had to go and buy film, okay? And every roll of film would cost me back then somewhere around $6 or $7. Now, $6 or $7 today is not much, but back then, as a student, they would add up. So I couldn't spend a lot of money on buying too many rolls of film. I would take with me 1 or 2 rolls of 36 exposure film and take pictures. And every photograph was very precious to me because I knew I had to spend time to develop the film. I had to spend at least 2 or 3 hours in the laboratory to develop the film, fix it, and dry it. And then look at the negative, not the positive image. Make a contact sheet. All of that would take a lot of time. Now, I can do all that in snap of a finger. I can take a picture and look at it immediately, okay, and decide if I like it or not. Or just take thousands of photographs and then look at them later whenever I have time. So that hurdle of managing my time or being very frugal as far as spend and invest my time and money, that has been taken care of. So digital photography has enabled me to explore more, enjoy my time taking pictures. And the quality of the photographs, if you know what you're doing, and that's what I teach in my class, the basics of photography, everything that was taught in the past, like how to control how much of your photograph is going to be in focus, and how much of the photograph is going to be blurry, how clear you want the photograph to be. Do you want to show a trace of movement in your photograph? That's motion blur. Do you want to pan an image? Just one object that is moving is clear and the background is blurry. You can do all that, and they're not that hard to do if you know what you're doing. And when you know what you're doing, you realize it's relatively very easy to control these things. There are only 3 elements in a camera, which is the ISO, with the sensitivity of the sensor, is the aperture. There's an adjustable hole in the lens of your camera. When you open it up, there's more light coming in. When you close it, it becomes there's less light coming in. Okay? So with that, you can control your exposure, how bright or how dark your image is going to be, and you can control how much of the picture is going to be blurry and how much of the picture is going to be clear. And then the third element is shutter. So shutter is a screen in front of the sensor. How long that screen is open has to do with how much of light is being recorded on the sensor. Okay. Obviously, once again, If it's open for a long time, there's more light coming in and registered. If it closes quickly, there's less light coming in. But then you can snap and capture movement. You can stop motion. So these three elements, that's all it is. Every camera you see, all the digital buttons and dials and you name it, all of those things in a digital camera, all the menu items, they're all there for you to control these three elements. So the basics are simple. There are only three. So if you learn these three elements and you just change one at the time, because the cameras would allow you to do that. The digital cameras are very smart now. They're not dumb like they used to be. They can think for themselves, and they could be a good partner for you, especially the cameras that have been manufactured last 6 or 7 years. They're wonderful. You decide what elements out of these three you want to change. So if you want to control how much of the picture is going to be in focus, you choose aperture priority mode. It usually marked with an A alphabet, or AV, aperture value, or AP, aperture priority. All of these three are the same. Now, different manufacturers use different terminology, but digital technology is pretty much the same. And the reason they're the same is because different research components, different components are made by different manufacturers and patented to them. So if you want to use that component, you have to use their patent, you have to pay them. And since they're different, like different companies, Kodak, Nikon, Canon, Yashica, Olympus, you name it, Sony, Fujifilm, all of these companies, they come up with a series of components that they patented to themselves. Now, because the patents and different components run through different companies, so in order for these companies to use each other's patents, they have to work with each other. So they have to have peace with one another. It's good commerce. Okay, so, but what happens is at the end, the technology that they're using, all of them are bringing this together, it becomes one. So all they do is just changing the names of different functions in the camera and putting them in different places, but the technology is pretty much the same. I mean, if you study history of development of digital technology, which is a very short history compared to the history of our civilization, or the history of art, or history of even analog photography, which goes back to 1839 in Europe. It's a very short history. It goes back to early 1970s. You realize that over time, these components were added one by one, and we are enjoying that today. I could have lost the trace of my thoughts, the train of my thoughts. So I think what I'm trying to say at the end is that what I teach my students is how to manipulate these three factors. And when they learn to do that, the only thing remains is composition. And that's when we're going to work on composition. So we work with aperture in the beginning, we work with shutter, and then we work with how to deal with composition. I ask them to keep the ISO at the same place. And, when the students come in, they turn in photographs in the beginning. I ask them to turn in some photographs, and you look at those photographs, and then you look at the photographs they take at the end of the semester. You juxtapose these two, you realize how much they learn. So it's very satisfying when at the end of the semester for the student, and I think for the teacher, they have something visual, tangible they can look at and see the progress. Because most of the academic courses, the progress is defined with exams, okay? So we do have a technical exam, but it's a take-home exam. It's basically for you to organize your thoughts and put them down in writing. So in the future, you can go back to it as a reference card and study it if you have a question. it's really for students' sake to not forget what they learn in the class. But the actual test is the portfolios, the photographs they develop over time, and the skills they gain. And I give my students the opportunity to participate in photography competitions. We have usually 3 photography competitions every semester. And those who, and I don't choose the photographs. I mean, that's the beautiful part. I use the polling function of Lalima, and students themselves from both of my classes, they choose the photographs that are displayed anonymously, so we don't know whose photograph it is. They don't know if it's from their classmates or not. These are photographs that should not have been shown in the class previously, so students don't necessarily become biased about the student who took the photograph, but they judge the photograph based on its merit, composition, and exposure and quality. So every semester, these 3 photo competitions, I look at these photographs when students submit, and the photographs chosen for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place. I see that not only students who submit these photographs, they develop and progress over time, but also students who choose these photographs. The photographs are chosen in the early on, the first photo competition. They're more emotional, they're more, what is the word for it? More about family feelings and stuff like that, which is fine. But then as time goes by, we get to the 3rd photo competition. They become photo editors. They choose photographs that are technically, not only in terms of emotional aspects and human aspects are interesting and important, but they're technically very, very rich, and good skills was used to take them. So it's very satisfying in my class when I see the development and progress of students' skills and work. And we do have history components early on. I have 5 modules. We start with module 1, which is basically helping students get to know their own cameras. And we move on to aperture, setting of the aperture, and then module 2, shutter, and we then get into composition. By the time we get to module 4, they have to be completely confident about the basics of photography. So that's what they're going to learn in my class, the basics of digital photography, how to control these 3 elements, shutter, aperture, and ISO. And then when we get to the 5th module, it's just developing a presentation of what they have learned in the past and what work they collected. One of the components, I don't know if we have time, I want to mention one of the, do we have time? Just a few more minutes?
Yeah, totally. We have all the time.
Great. So the components I added to my online classes, you see, is the use of mobile technology. Okay, so in my face-to-face classes, I did not let students use their phone cameras. But then again, I noticed that phone cameras are catching up really quickly. I mean, beginning with iPhone 10, I see potentials of being able to take or simulate at least what we have in traditional, we can say traditional digital photography now. I mean, using DSLR cameras or mirrorless cameras. So iPhones, Samsungs, other, mobile phones, LG, whatever you Google, whatever you're using now, these manufacturers realize photography is so important to people. It's so much of inner part of our society. I mean, people like to see and being seen and show. So these are the very important desires that people have all the time. There was a time that photography was considered to be a part of that voyeur, being a voyeur to see through the people kind of culture, but that's not true anymore. People today, our new generations, are not scared of seeing and being seen, so they want to show more of themselves, and that's been on the side of photography, imaging, digital imaging today, and gradually the term digital imaging is going to be used because we are stepping beyond just taking photographs with a camera and a lens. We are getting into the realm of software photography and simulated images. I mean, just face it, the photographs you take with your phone cameras are not, they would simulate and they would appear to be like taken with professional cameras because they show depth of field. With portrait mode, for example, in your iPhone cameras, you take a photograph of a person, the face of that person is clear and sharp, the background is blurry. So this was the effect that we could achieve with traditional lenses on our DSLR cameras or mirrorless cameras. Now you can create that effect. It's an effect, it's a filter. It's not a real thing, but who cares? When the results appear to be as attractive as the photographs you take with your quote by quote more serious cameras, who cares if the results are great and you love them, they're attractive, they do the job for you. And especially that, mobile cameras are now, they have a much larger storage space. You can use cloud technology as well, so there's no fear of running out of space. You can take as many photographs as you want with high quality. You're talking about like 10 megapixels quality for each photograph is kind of passé now. You're talking now about 15, 20, 24 megapixels photograph. That's something like 25 or 28 megabytes of information. Okay, and then when you have that much information in your photography file, if you decide to print that photograph, you can make a beautiful, poster-sized photograph without having to worry about losing quality. Okay, and that brings me to another subject, printing. Okay, printing was the end product in photography in the old days. Now, printing is a luxury. It's a choice you may want to make or not. Most of us, you, myself, my students, and other teachers and other people, they prefer to save space. So keep all of these photographs in digital form. You can always take out your mobile device or put them on, connect them to your TV and have a slideshow of your photographs for your family and friends. You don't have to print them and see them all the time. Now, having that said, I love prints, but that's just a subjective love for print photography. At the end, when I think about how advantageous and how wonderful it is to be able to organize thousands of photographs and be able to access those photographs because of proper organization of labeling. And that's what I teach my students to label their photographs so they can find them, they can access the photographs. That's another skill they have to learn in my class. So when you access those photographs, when you want to show them, so the end product may be digital image, but it does serve the same purpose, brings friends and family together, or help you to develop a portfolio that you can share with a gallery manager online. You just send your portfolio digitally to your gallery manager. My people can participate in photo competitions and art exhibitions all over the world. They don't have to travel to New York City to show their portfolios and get an exhibition. All they have to do is to contact the gallery manager and just send them their portfolios with some writing, and they look at them. If they want to show the work, they contact you. If they don't want to show the work, they send you a nice email and they say, well, maybe not now, but we are looking forward to see how you develop your work in the future. So send us more work. So this is the way it's become. So digital technology has, has many advantages that we did not have in the past. So I'm very excited of what is being presented to us. Now, your next question, I'm going to put it to you, maybe where are we going with digital photography? So where are we going with digital technology is that the way things are, it seems like that lenses become more of the romantic past, the use of lenses on your cameras. And what happens is that you end up just allowing, just like your mobile phone, because your mobile phone doesn't have a long lens that you can change the glass elements. It does allow some light, a lot of light to come in and registers that light and translates that light to an image based on your program. So it's all software. Now, software technology is taking over hardware of cameras. So instead of using lens, you develop programs, and there are already programs developed. You use programs that would basically allow photographers to capture, record an event, just like a video recording. And then they go to their computers, they put that recording in the computer asks you, who do you want to be in focus in this image? You choose the person or the thing you want to be in focus, and you want to blur out everything else, everybody else. That's going to happen. And it is similar to you being there taking different photographs of different things at that very moment. So software is taking over hardware in photography. So I can easily see that in the future, the fun of using lenses is going to be just a part of our romantic past. It may exist, it may continue to develop, but it's not going to be the main thing. So anytime you want to think about the future of photography, look at your phone camera. That's where we're going, basically. And is it good or bad? As long as you get the final results and it's high quality, who cares? Sure, we just learn to adjust and adapt, just like anything else in our civilization.
Yeah, I really appreciate your view on what technology is providing and the way that we use it to shape our everyday lives in our society. And cameras is a very well-used aspect of that.
Definitely. And anything you do, any job you're going to get into, there is an aspect of that job you're going to be doing that has to do with imaging. I mean, just think about it. A lot of my students want to get into administration of justice, fashion design industry, I don't know, you name it, fire science. At the end of the day, they have to work with cameras, because cameras have become an indispensable part of our lives. I mean, in terms of security, for example. If you study how Chinese government or Russian government are controlling their population, they have cameras everywhere in their society. Now, I'm not talking about it's good or bad, it's anti-American or not, but what I'm talking about is technology. Technology in itself is like fire, okay? Fire could be good and used for benign purposes, or it could be bad and used for destructive purposes. So how we use fire is up to us, what we're going to do with it. But definitely, digital imaging has become an indispensable, more so today, and it will be in the future of our lives. Yeah.
Felt like I just took your class.
Well, please do. I don't want to let any student go. I want all of my students, I want everybody to take my class and enjoy photography. And that's why I always say, not only about my photography class, I think it's important, for example, in my writing intensive art appreciation course, Art 101. It does have a section that is writing intensive. I'm an avid supporter of having fun when you write. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be disciplined. I think when you learn how to write with somewhat self-control, be able to communicate ideas, making prose that people can understand, and opening up a very descriptive world in writing. When you learn that, it's fun. And the same thing is true with photography. When you learn how to control and make the same beautiful image happen every single time at will, that is fun. That's power. And the fact that, like a magician, every time you show the cards and the magic you're playing, is appreciated by others because you get it right. When you get it right, it feels good. It's just like being a magician. Every single time you write something, when you get, when you think about the fun aspect, push over or do whatever you want. Fun doesn't mean chaos, in my opinion. Fun means when you can make things happen every time that you feel and think that it should happen. You control the circumstances and make it happen. That's fun. So, in my opinion, and I think students should be encouraged to have fun when they're doing these things, whether they're writing or taking pictures. Well, I definitely want you guys in my class, for sure.
No, we're gonna graduate this semester.
Oh,
I know,
bummer. But well, congratulations then. Yeah, good for you. What are your plans? What do you want to do with your degree here?
So
Do you have
we're all in the AEC course.
Okay.
So, architecture, construction management.
Awesome. So you learn. Do they use CAD still today? Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good program to use. Yeah, it's a good branch of knowledge you can get into and hopefully make good living too in the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Lastly, so we have final question.
Sure.
Do you have any advice for starting photographers, or like resources?
Any advice?
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to have very expensive piece of equipment to make good photographs, and you hear this from all photography instructors. I mean, I've never seen a single photography professor or instructor to tell you that you need to have a great camera to take great pictures. They usually tell you that when you learn to control even a basic, very reasonably priced camera, when you learn how to control it, and you know where to point and where to be the right place in the right time, you can always make good photographs. So I think equipment is important, but it's not, incredibly crucial to making good photographs. It is definitely consequential to the kind of photograph you make. I mean, you cannot make, you cannot stop a bullet in the air and take a photograph of it if you don't have the right equipment. Let's face it, you need to have the right equipment to do that. But you can take good photographs of people. I also teach photojournalism every spring. This is the first spring that my class was not offered because the Department of, what is the language arts department could not afford having the so-called boutique class. They call them boutique classes. These are courses are offered every other semester. So photojournalism has been very close to my heart. To me, when you learn to take a good photograph, and a good photograph meaning that the photograph is exposed properly, you have the areas that you want to be seen and they're light, bright, and they come out that way. And the areas that you want them to be dark, they're dark the way you want them to be. And then you show people in their everyday lives, and you capture that humanity. That's really beautiful. So, I only thing I can tell, I can suggest for starting photographers is, first of all, think about photography to begin with as a hobby. Don't think of photography as a profession. Let time pass and you keep taking photographs. If you feel you cannot live without it, it's just like food, water, air. You cannot live without food, you cannot live without water, you cannot live without air. If photography is not like that, don't think of it as your profession, okay? Think of it as a hobby. And there's no reason, if you're a physician, if you are an engineer, an architect, a nurse, a police officer, a firefighter, there's no reason for you to also enjoy photography. I had in the past, in my non-credit courses that I used to teach at UH Manoa, doctors, physicians taking the class, nurses, firefighters, police officers. So, and they loved photography, but that was not their profession. Okay, so there's no reason for you to think of photography as your profession when you take a basic photography class. Think of it as your hobby. And if you reach that point that you think you cannot live without it, then you may want to think about getting into the profession. Then you have to do serious soul searching, and you have to do serious research on the occupations and in your professional world that are available to photographers. Photography could be lucrative as a profession if you know what you're doing and you have right connections. Networking and right connections are really important, just like any studio job, painting, drawing, sculpture. And it's not all art. You could make good money just taking photographs of jewelry. Food photography, another branch, photojournalism, if you want to get into that, portrait photography, wedding and party photography. There are so many different branches that you may want to get into. But if you want to establish a family, you want to be a family man or woman, and you're thinking about having enough income to support your family and make their dreams come true, then you have to think about photography as a profession and how much money you can earn and what are the requirements, what are the challenges you have to face, and if you're willing to sacrifice a lot of things before you get them, just like anything else. So you become, this is my understanding, I may be wrong, but if you become an engineer, like my brother did, his son, or you become a doctor like one of my cousins, you know that you make enough money to form a family and live happily ever after, because there's always job for you. But when you want to become a photographer, you have to think about a lot of other things that you would not normally think of when you become an engineer, architect, or doctor, physician. So those are the hard questions that a lot of times instructors, especially art instructors, don't talk about. It seems like they feel uncomfortable about talking about money because we always think about art and philosophy and spiritualism on the same plane. They could be all that, but there's real life too that you have to think about, and how much money you're going to make, and if it's going to be enough for you to have a family. That's something you should think about very seriously. I hope this helps, whatever you're doing here. I hope that it helps our students. And I think you guys are doing a fabulous job. I'm very proud and very honored to be asked to be in your program. And I hope this achieves the goals you have in mind. And I thank you for this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your perspective on a lot of these topics relating to technology and just your career goals and hobbies and just life in general. And it's just a really good perspective.
My pleasure.
Okay, so if you guys are interested in making a difference for Honolulu CC, please consider becoming a student leader like all of us here. Make sure to email hccsle@hawaii.edu to apply. We really encourage everybody to, and we really appreciate everyone's input as an active student for the UH campus. Submissions for the Art and Soul are now open. So if you have artwork that you'd like to be featured and you wanted to have a chance to go in the magazine, please submit all of your artwork to tinyurl.com/HCC Art and Soul. Drawings, paintings, digital art, photos, poems, song lyrics, woodworking, sculptures, fashion, cosmetology, and any form of artwork is welcome. Thank you, everyone, once again for listening to the podcast. You guys can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Anchor. New episodes are up every Monday. Make sure to visit zakala.net for campus news and events. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at HCC Kala News. Once again, everybody, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, perfect.